Okay, hello everyone. Looks like there's still a few joining from the waiting room. I'm going to give it just a second. All right, well, welcome to the Exploring the Link Between Accreditation and Ensuring Learning session. My name is Megan, Fresno City College. I'm going to be your moderator for this session. Before I introduce our presenters, I have a few items to share with you. Please note we are in a Zoom meeting. You're going to have both video and audio capabilities. We ask for you to please keep yourself muted unless you're interacting with us in some way. We will have an opportunity for questions and answers, but in the meantime, please utilize the chat functions. And you do have the ability to post reactions, give a thumbs up, those kind of things. Feel free to use those as appropriate. And thank you for being with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amber.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Gillis, and I am an English faculty member at Compton College. I also have the honor of serving as the Accreditation Faculty Coordinator there, as well as the SLO Coordinator.
And I'm Sherry Berger. I am the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Compton College. I have the pleasure of working with Amber as we've been finishing our midterm report and starting our substantive change. And I came from Los Angeles Pierce College in the LA district, where I was a faculty member and a dean and a vice president before Compton. And we do have another member who will be joining us on this presentation as soon as she's able to do so, barring technical difficulties that she must be experiencing. So, Amber, do you want to get us started?
Sure. So go ahead and go to our first slide, please.
I'm in charge of the slide.
All right, so we wanted to take a couple of minutes just to find out, take the temperature of the room, find out who's with us. So feel free to use either the chat function or raise your hand or unmute yourself. So tell us a bit about yourself. So who are you and what are you hoping to learn today? Hi, Nicole. Yoga instructor. We were just talking about flexibility earlier in our first presentation. Hi, Erin. Nice to have you with us. Go English. Hi, Grace. I have to apologize ahead of time if you hear my toddler. He's 2 years old, so I'll be muting periodically. Hi, Lorraine. Nice to have you here.
Another yoga instructor. Oh, and Henry from Victor Valley. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice to have you
hi,
here.
Henry. Enrique. Oh, great. So Denise says that she's an English professor at Baker's College, and she's also on her assessment committee. So she's interested in taking things back to help her faculty assess their SLOs. Well, I hope that we're able to help you today. And, as we're going through, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions or even to respond. Typically, whoever's not speaking will, utilize the chat box quite a bit to be able to answer your questions. And if we don't have a question up front, then we can certainly touch base with you via email. Oh, hey, Kevin. Oh, Camino. Hello. It's been ages since I've seen you.
A lot of English faculty are in the house today.
I know. I like it. I like it a lot. It's because we're overachievers.
All right. I think I'm going to get started.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Let's do it.
Why is it not great? All right. So we thought we'd start off with, because we are presenting from the ASCCC Accreditation Committee, we talk about what the standards say about ensuring learning before we get into the ensuring learning, because there is a link, right, between the work that we do in assessing SLOs and how that helps us in addressing the standards. And so I took this from the Guide to Institutional Self-Evaluation, Improvement, Peer Review. And it tells us what the standards are really asking for us in a really nice nutshell. And the first thing on the list is to ensure learning is the institution's core activity. And so everything that we're going to do within the assessment then becomes evidence to document that as part of the accreditation process. So also we're supposed to support and produce student learning, assess how well learning is occurring, making changes to improve student learning, organize these processes effectively to support student learning, allocate resources to support student learning, improve learning as an important means to institutional improvement. Everything in what the standards are requiring that we provide is all about student learning. Even when they're talking about things in other standards like technology resources or the board or human resources, all of these things still are with student learning at the center of the work we do. And FLOs are the ways that we are assessing that student learning. So if there was any doubt about the connection between outcomes and student learning, here it is. Now, I know I went down a rabbit hole and I said, well, what standard exactly where am I answering this? So I looked at standard 1. Talks about academic quality. And I thought, well, maybe that's there. And then also standard 2, student learning programs and support services. So it has learning right in the title. So I went on a rabbit hole. So I'm not asking anybody else to go down the same rabbit hole here. I found a couple of standards that I want to share. I'm not going to read them to you, but 1B1 talks about, demonstrating substantive and collegial dialogue about outcomes. And so when you're addressing standards, the work that we're doing and having the conversations in department meetings, in committee meetings, in the Senate, these are all conversations that document the dialogue we're having about student learning and how we are trying to make improvements in that continuous quality improvement cycle to ensure that our students are really learning at the standards they need. Then I looked in standard 2A and found that faculty, regularly engage in these kinds of discussions about content and methods of instruction. And we all take collective ownership over the learning experience. But this is very faculty-centered, and that there is the primacy here in terms of curriculum and in terms of the classroom rests with the faculty. So the faculty, all of you guys, really are the keepers and the people who move the effort forward at the colleges. A few more. I found some in 2A is really big here. Well, maybe using effectively the modes of instruction, and that's more important now than ever as we've all transitioned to this remote learning. But that the things that we're using need to also support students and in their learning. And then I found a really nice one that was about CTE. Because graduates completing CTE certificates and degrees have to demonstrate technical expertise. And that's how we send our students off in these CTE programs like nursing, for example. And then we send them to go take national exams, state exams to get their license. And we can maybe more easily quantify the learning and demonstrate the connection between learning and getting that job because they've passed that external exam. Sometimes it's a little bit harder in the areas where we're just talking about transfer possibly. So I'm going to be listening in to hear all the great conversation that takes place. So which standard? There's not just one. The key is to be intentional, engage in continuous dialogue, and be transparent about student learning and the continuous efforts to improve how we help our students succeed. So I'm going to leave it there and I'm going to turn it back over to Amber. But you're muted.
I'm going to unmute myself. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 4 pillars of guided pathways. So I know that this is nothing new to us, but just as a quick reminder, right, we're here to clarify the path for students, to help them enter that path, right, through onboarding processes. We want them to stay on the path, right, through support services in the classroom, right? And then we also want to make sure that they are that we're ensuring that they learn something. Right. So if they're going to spend, a couple of years with us, we need to make sure that we are preparing them to either transfer or to enter the workforce. Next slide, please. So this is what, this is what our guided pathways tells us about ensuring learning. So ensuring learning, right, is that learning is happening with intentional outcomes, and that the focus is on analytics, both at the classroom and the programmatic level. So as Sherry's just mentioned, yes, this is linked also to our accreditation standards. We can see the same type of language. But again, it's important to know that the faculty are really the ones that are driving this ship when it comes to assessment and ensuring learning. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to ask you, all right? So we want to know, what kinds of assessment do you use to determine that students are learning in your classroom? So just think briefly for a moment. So we're going to give you a few seconds to think about this, and I'd like to ask you to put a few things into the chat. I feel like I'm on TikTok where I'm asking a question, right? Tell me how you ensure learning without telling me that you ensure learning. I'm new to TikTok, students begged. Okay, so we see discussions, resource sources. Great. Reflection questions, 1-minute essays. Okay, great. Performance. So can I ask you, Allison, when you say performance, are you, what do you mean by performance? So a written performance, cameras on, cameras off? Are we talking performance or engagement?
We're talking about actually artistic performance. My field
Okay.
is dance. So this would be in
Great.
rehearsals and preparation for concert performance, whether it's with a live audience or recorded.
Oh, that's wonderful. And students are receptive and you get great things, I bet.
Yes, I mean, there's always a curve, right? Because like with anything, students are not always prepared to present, which is a skill set on its own. But we are trying to prepare students for transfer, and auditioning, which is a form of presenting, is a vital part of the art form. So, and for students that aren't looking for a career in dance, we always talk about the importance of being able to present in front of people, because you never know when you're going to have to do it for, for that job interview, for that raise, toast at a wedding.
Sure.
So you're able to present yourself. Yeah.
That's actually really great. Makes me wonder if, if students are also able to record those performances and then, kind of help them culminate into a portfolio that they could use, later on.
Yes, we do that.
Yeah, that's great. So I see some additional things, right? So some short essays, active engagement, such as a jigsaw, right? Or text where each student group explains a portion of the text. Okay, great. And then yes, I like this. So both formative and summative assessment, all right, on an element being addressed, right? So such as a presentation, a dialogue in a language, tests, quizzes, reflective essays, right? And so I think, what we're seeing is a variety, right, of tools that we can use in the classroom, right? And I think that also helps address those standards, right, where we understand that students have a variety of ways in which they need to learn, right? So a combination of, different skill sets. So that's great. Okay, so even if things are coming to you, again, just go ahead and keep putting them in the chat, but we're also going to keep moving along. Okay, so next slide, please, Sherry. All right, so this one is a little bit meatier, right? So this was when we started together as an accreditation committee, this was a question that we deliberated quite a bit. And the idea, right, is that how have SLO and PLO assessments changed at your college since the implementation of guided pathways? And, it is possible, to note, right, and even say, it's possible that conversations have not yet begun, because we are neck deep really in trying to implement guided pathways. So maybe some of those conversations haven't quite yet happened. So at this time, we would like to ask you to go into breakout rooms. So Megan, if we can have your help, we're going to ask everyone to go into a breakout room. You'll be randomly assigned, and we're going to give 5 minutes. Right, and we want to, have you guys maybe just talk amongst yourselves for a few minutes to answer this question, and then we'll come back together as a group.
All righty, here we go.
Okay.
Here's what going.
I left and so did the PowerPoint.
Okay. So I wanted to just back up, if it's okay, just one slide. And just very quickly, I'm sorry, I just want to take an aside for a second. Megan, I don't think Claudia has made it into the group. She sent me an email saying that she's trying to get in.
Does she have the updated Zoom link?
She may not. So Sherry, do you mind if I turn this over to you to kind of lead, just for people to kind of come back and touch base with the group? And I'm going to step aside for a second and help Claudia. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Flexibility in the remote learning environments and remote conference environments at play. I see more people have joined us from their breakout sessions. So one of the things that was in our breakout room was that the intentionality between linking program learning outcomes assessment to program review and actually having questions within how the college was reporting, make that connection. Does anybody else want to share anything from their breakouts? One or two things in the chat, or unmute the mic and share anything interesting about how maybe assessment has changed. If not, I'll go on. Okay.
Well, our group pretty much nothing has changed as yet. Some of us have incorporated the guided pathways, but we haven't had the discussion yet as to how it's going to change our SLOs or PLOs.
All right. Did anybody have any other ideas that they wanted to share? Okay. So, if we had to describe your campus's process of assessment, do you feel that the process is clear for all faculty? And I would include adjuncts in there, because oftentimes we focus on full-time faculty because they carry a heavier list of the work that gets done, but the adjuncts have a role to play as well. So if we want to just put into the chat, what the process is, how faculty are engaging, we'll take a moment for that.
Hey, I got here. What happened?
Claudia has joined us.
Oh, hello, Claudia.
There was an error. What happened? Sorry. I just got the news that the Zoom was moved to a different platform. I don't know the number.
All right. Any thoughts in the chat, anybody?
Yeah, I wanted to back up for just a moment too. I mean, I know still address this question here, but I was in a breakout room with, I believe it's Craig, also from San Francisco City College. And one thing that I found that, that we're kind of talking about is that they have a very robust system. They have a very robust process for SLOs, and assessment. And he said that, the conversations that are, that need to start happening is really trying to figure out how to get CurricuNet now to work with these guided pathways, the new program maps, so that it is intuitive. And I think that, I kind of made the comment where it was, square peg round, or would I say square peg round hole or something like that. I always mess that up. But I think that's the idea, right? And so, I would challenge everyone that's here that, yes, we might have, assessment processes and SLO statements and all these different things that are currently in place and they work right now. But as the colleges are beginning to shift towards this guided pathways framework, we might have to reimagine how we're assessing and what some of those processes might look like. So what was working before may not work in this new environment. And I know that that's probably something that we don't want to hear, right? But we have to make sure, right, that these processes are clear so that we can talk about them and so that we can actually complete them, right? Because if we do have processes on our campuses that are extremely complicated and convoluted, it is going to make it difficult, right, for faculty, both full-time and part-time, to have discussions around these, these assessments. And also, right, if we're focused so much on, complicated processes, we might actually end up losing the real fruit, right, of the labors, which is the actual ensuring learning component, right? So I'm going to look and see if there's some things in the chat.
Yeah,
So
Kevin was saying that a lot of times adjuncts were overlooked in the process, and they're trying to get them more involved and have department chairs or he as the coordinator help them with processing and selecting. And Aaron said that the process was clear, but not as much as engagement from adjuncts. And we need to bring them into the conversation. I thought there was something here about diverse, making sure that we get assessment at the night classes. Oh, that was in Kevin's response.
yes.
Somebody has their hand up. Christine Pruitt has their hand raised. So why don't you unmute yourself and jump in?
Yeah, my first foray into trying to shift my college was to propose an ILO that was more aligned with guided pathways, that was focused on industry standards and professional interaction, and use that to have an institutional conversation about how we might shift assessment aligned with guided pathways, and then kind of encouraged my program coordinators to start the conversations about PLOs and shifting those, which led to then looking at course. So like kind of starting at the institutional level of assessment, I think can help get everybody into the conversation at least, and just be aware that it's happening. So that's been helpful at my school at least.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for sharing that. Really interesting
Helpful.
perspective.
Sorry, my child.
There's some more in the chat here about,
yeah, I'm reading.
Grace has said that, sometimes adjuncts won't engage without extra pay. And then we have a couple here from Lubin about doing a meta assessment of the process. That's excellent. Sometimes it's really great to take a step back and assess the process itself and then make changes based on that. And I'm glad to hear that there was a lot of faculty engagement. That's excellent. And Denise, their issues revolve around union contracts.
May I say something about union contracts?
Oh, absolutely. Jump on in.
Okay, this is Kevin. We had a big debate about this, but we finally came down at Imperial Valley College. Adjuncts are supposed to conduct and collect the assessments. However, if our adjuncts were asked to create an assessment, an SLO assessment or language change, then we would have to pay them. So I'm not sure if that helps other schools.
And Kevin, do you have a technology or a software that you use for your SLO assessments?
Right now we're using we used to use Spoll, but I found it to be a nightmare. So the vice president was great enough so I built a website in Canvas and I created all of my own forms. So when they fill out the form, they get a copy and I get a copy. And then I just put everything in Excel spreadsheets. So it's very transparent. So, but yeah. That's what we do.
Nice workaround. Great. No, I think that is it. In my prior institution, the adjuncts had to, they submit their SLO assessment data. They used Illumin. It was at the student level. It wasn't very time consuming. But then when it came to analyzing the data and writing the reports, that fell back to the full-time faculty in the department. And adjuncts were invited to the meetings if they chose to participate.
Yeah, and for us to, like, let's say that there were 2 adjuncts and 4 full-time. When we're closing the loop, a lot of them will do because they don't see the adjuncts a lot, they do a email chain so they can get their input. My data could be improved because of this, and then that is added into the SLO closing of the loop form that they have to fill out. Usually what we do is have 1 lead per SLO. So if there's 7 instructors, 1 instructor will collect all the data and make sure all of the closing of the loop stuff is complete, and then they'll enter it into the system.
All right, I'm reading Craig here. Said course level assessments of at least 1 outcome happen every semester, due by the time the grades are due, and conversations Department level conversations coordinate outcomes choices through curriculum mapping. The data go into GLO reports that are part of college-wide conversations, and sometimes it happens during flex days. Is there anything you want to add in there, Craig? Since I butchered the chat, I'm sorry.
Sorry about the typos in there.
Okay.
Rushing. Yeah, I mean, we also have an extensive website with training materials, and one of the keys is, I mean, the communication in the department and that coordination, so people aren't just choosing any old outcome, and then that helps with conversations, but also the flexibility, that teachers have with what they're doing in the class in order to see if that outcome, has kicked in or not. So there's that kind of flexibility too. So it's not like an extra task. It's just, there's flexibility. So that helps with it and helps with the workload. And as long as we keep bringing it back to improvement as it relates to our communication with each other and reflection on all this, and then it makes sense. So, but it all pours into other reports that are then they're part of other conversations and reports that go to different groups on campus that can take action on inequities that maybe come through in the reports too. But it all comes from that course level assessment work.
Thank you. Any other ideas that people want to share?
It's Kevin again. I'm sorry to be such a pain, but I like the flex day idea, but we also, for our SLOs, I'd like everybody to have them in, like if you collect them in spring, I like to have them all submitted by the 6th week of the next semester. This way the closing of the loop gets finished because I've had people enter the forms without doing the closing of the loop. And then the second thing is I really like, and I think this piggybacks on the last presentation, if you discuss them during your department meetings, I know that the secretaries take the, they take the minutes, and then you have a record of that, because they want SLOs and assessments to be discussed a lot, keep the dialogue going. Oh, that might even been in here.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's 2B or something. Yeah, exactly. I'm very ADD to roll with it. So yeah, but I just think that would work well. And then,
no, those are great points.
And then the last thing I like that Craig said was the course level goes to the PLO. And then I was talking earlier in our breakout session, the PLOs we have directly linked to the program review. So I think that's where it could get really out to the campus or other meetings, is through the program review. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And, we really should be using assessment to inform asks, right? So when we're making recommendations and asking for things in our program review, the best place to really make that ask and to quantify it with data is in the program review. So if we're doing SLO assessments and then, following up with action plans, which then lead into our PLOs, we can, again, use that to inform the things that we're asking. And I think it helps make a compelling argument to, our, I like to think Sherry is she's my vice president. But again, I think that also helps, faculty be able to communicate to administration the types of things that they need in the classroom. Right. So if we're asking for, whiteboards or, rearrangements of classrooms or modifications to buildings, we have the data to support that. And so we're able to offer solutions to potential problems that we're facing. So those are great points. Thank you for sharing those. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about adapting assessment. It's no mystery to us, right, that we have been significantly impacted by moving our classes into online or remote learning. So we really want to talk about, ways that, how has your assessment been impacted? So in particular, how recent events impacted your SLO and PLO assessment in your own classroom? right? So in a previous, I did an assessment presentation a little earlier, and we were talking about, things that were perhaps really important in your face-to-face classroom are maybe not as important in the online environment. And, how has your assessment changed? How are we ensuring that learning, right, is still occurring even in this online environment? So if anybody wants to take a crack at that one. It's kind of a big question. Has anyone's assessments kind of crawled to a halt or kind of slowed down a little bit?
One of my colleagues, we were SLO coordinators together. Janie Skinner gave a presentation this morning, and we actually surveyed faculty last spring after things kind of fell apart, and yeah, we went down. We were always in at least 90% in response, and it went down to like 28%. Assessment response, and because it was optional. But what also came out in the survey was people were appreciating outcomes much more, and realized when they had to redesign their courses to go remote. So it had a really cool effect. We didn't have the as much quantitative data, but we had some really interesting qualitative effects as a result of that, because people are like, wow, I can't actually redesign this course unless I have a good grasp of the outcomes, and it needs to come out of that. So there was a new appreciation, and then our assessment numbers picked up this past fall.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's important. I also want to acknowledge Kevin's comment. It says that their college did a couple of sections that were fully online from the start of spring 2020, but now they're back up to full regular slate of assessment this last fall. So we'll see what the reports look like. So they're due in just a couple of weeks. So yeah, and then again, using discussion prompts, as an effective method of having students reflect on course material. That's a great way also, right? So asking the students, right? Who would have thought, right? Are you learning? Right? So that's a good one as well. All right, so great. So yeah, it's a huge change for your yoga class, right? But it's great because you had to rethink and make assignments and activities that match the SLOs. Yeah, so for me as an English faculty member, I've had to scaffold assignments in ways that I never imagined, right? Because these are things that kind of take for granted when you're in a face-to-face setting. But, if you're not physically, tangibly, if you're in an asynchronous classroom, you may have to rethink how you are scaffolding your assignments and then asking questions, along the way to make sure that students are on track. So yeah, that makes complete sense to me, Lorraine. Thank you for saying that. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And then I was going to go ahead and turn this over to Claudia.
I am so sorry. I think they changed the number. I got lost in the web, but I'm here. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm in my car. Okay, I don't know what happened, but I'm here. So questions that we should ask about ourselves to relate to the pillar 4. How well defined are we learning outcomes from each other in our programs? Are the programs learning outcome aligned with the skills and the knowledge students need to succeed in a 4-year college? Majors and employment opportunities targeted by each other programs? Are assignments and exams designed to evaluate whatever students are building essential skills and mastering and learning outcomes across each program? So we always ask about those questions, and things are changing right now with the pandemic. And for example, what a lot of the colleges are doing now is through the guided pathways, they combine work such as example with student success and student support programs like the tutoring and the cranium and the DSS department to make sure that we are helping the students in their work, having tutors in the classroom. In our case at Southwestern, that's what we do. For example, also strong workforce and career education. We're actually working a lot with that department this semester in order to help students build those tools and build that pathway. So whatever whatever the path that they're going to take, either to get an AA or a BA, or they're going to transfer to four-year college, that's what we're actually doing. Also basic skills such as the reading component and the math, helping students, making sure that they have those skills um, ingrained in their curriculum. Also, we are working, for example, with the high schools, the students at the 12th graders coming in the future to go into the colleges, to take a couple of courses so they can acquire those skills. And to have that student equity is extremely important right now, especially in this pandemic. Um, we are actually working right now in that sense with those pillars in our college. So what exactly are you doing in each of your colleges? How well there, are you, defining those learning outcomes for each of your programs?
I also want to just add, if I can, quickly to what Claudia is saying, is that these three questions, we wanted just to make it clear where we got these. So these are not our original questions. These questions were actually developed by Teachers College out of Columbia University. And Teachers College, as most of you know, these are the folks that are working really hard with guided pathways. Mm-hmm. So we have, towards the end of our presentation, we'll send our slides over to the presenters, or I'm sorry, to the symposium, so you can see the references at the end. But these particular questions are all around the guided pathways framework. And so as Teachers College is developing white papers and various tools, you and your college might find these tools helpful when you start to try to ask these questions. And I know many of you said that you're here to learn things and to take them back and to start these conversations on your campus. These are three great questions that come out of Teachers College that you can take back to your college if you're not already looking at them, and use these to really engage those conversations with your faculty.
And I can answer a question. There is a question from Veronica Avila, and she's asking that I do mention that in my campus we teach reading. Yes, we're actually under the English department, but we have the subdivision, so we combine. So we have a couple of classes that they're transferred to the A3 for the 4-year. For example, in our case, in South Bay here in San Diego, the reading 158, which is that it's part of the A3. Combined it, either you can take that one or you can take English 116, either or. So we have different pathways for our students and their needs, especially to help them. Our demographic population, it's very diverse, and we want to make sure that we are providing the skills for them so they can gear into the correct path. We've been like that for, I think, more than nearly 15, almost 18 years like that, but we're part of the language and literature, and that's how we are subdivided. So we have options, we have different paths for our students in our case. So I know every school does it a little bit different, but this is in regards to what we do here in San Diego.
Thank you, Claudia.
You're
This is
welcome.
Veronica. Thank you. I appreciate that. We have been, yes, we have been trying to get our reading class on board. We have been trying to launch it. It's just been a little bit difficult for varied reasons, but we do have a transferable UC-CSU critical thinking reading class to use, and that would fit the AB 705 model and to complement the English writing class. It's just been very, well, quite frankly, political to get on board. But I'm glad to hear that you have it at San Diego State.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, San Diego, San Diego Community College.
That's awesome. We can change notes and, you know, we can get some feedback. We actually were thinking to do the UCSD too. We're thinking about to the UC. That's our next level. But yeah, you know, I can, you know, put my email for all of you if you have any questions. And, you know, the key is working together as a team. And the more we get, you know, on board with, and if you're under with the English classes, you know, as a team, and we build those skills for our students and have that student equity is extremely important. And keep that in mind, that to have that success for our students. And you know, and I'll put my email, so those of you who have any questions. But it was quite, you know, an ordeal, but we did it. And you know, the key here is to working together, all together. So,
Yes,
but I'm
please.
excited to hear that. What college are you from?
I'm from De Anza. I actually wrote the curriculum, and I actually modeled it after the first UC reading class, which is at UC Santa Cruz. I live in Santa Cruz, so I was able to talk to the professor who wrote that curriculum. And so that's the first ever reading class. But I don't know if you know this, probably throughout California, UC Santa Cruz has a lot of Latinx students, and they were just feeling the need to figure out how to prep these students. So they offered the first ever reading class. The woman that designed the curriculum was a professor at Harvard at their writing in their writing program. She's extremely knowledgeable. And so I modeled our reading class after her. And I think maybe Cerritos College, I don't know if anyone's here from Cerritos, but we're one of the first to actually have it transfer to UC and to CSU. And now I'm working with another professor at CSU because they're dying to have a formal reading class. So just put your email. Don't mean to take up time here, but thank you so much.
Oh, that's so excited. Whoa. Wow. Thank you.
I wanted to take a moment and just add something in. I'm a former math professor, and my husband teaches math. He's a professor of math as well. And so when moving remote, trying to rethink how to assess students in the online environment when you no longer have the face-to-face testing, and what is it that he had to really rethink what he was really trying to assess. You know, is it really just the skills, or now do I really put more emphasis on the, or did he put more emphasis on the concept? And so he shifted all of his tests within the class to be more conceptually based rather than, you know, computationally based. And I think that, you know, I hear him in the other room having conversations with his department colleagues about changing how they're doing their assessments just within each of the classes. So I think those are interesting conversations to have. And maybe this situation that we're all in with this pandemic is giving us the push to maybe have those different kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. Amber, there's something else we had, right? Next slide.
Yeah. So we have one more slide. And this is, I know a few folks in other presentations have been using Jamboards. We have a Jamboard for you. So we would like to say, this is the question, right? So what kinds of discussions should we be having, right? So I think the comments, in the chat are kind of, you know, we've been having that, I think this conversation, right, for the entire presentation, but specifically, what kind of conversations should we be having on our campuses about ensuring learning and assessment? So I'm going to put the Jamboard link in the comments, and if it is okay, I am going to ask if Sherry will stop sharing her screen, and I'm going to share mine and take us to our Jamboard. Let's hit share, so that way, so we should be in there. Right. So again, so for folks who haven't used Jamboard before, this is a sticky note. So you can click the sticky note. So what are we talking about? Probably what's for lunch, because that's what my department wants to talk about all the time. What are we eating? Okay. So, right. So what we're talking about, what's for lunch. But so what are maybe some of the things that we are talking about in terms of assessment, but what kinds of things haven't we been talking about? So what should we talk about, right? And what are we talking about, and what have we not been talking about? Okay. So I'm going to give about 5 minutes. So please add some sticky notes. Even if you're not sure, right? If you're like, I'm not sure what we should be talking about for assessment, put a sticky note on that. We want to know that too. And what we'd like to do with some of these Jamboard comments is maybe we can inform some type of white paper. We were talking about that earlier.
Thank God I found you guys. Okay, you disappear on me, and then I got the link to that it was changed. So I was so nervous, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, glad you made it.
I said something is wrong because I have my phone with me and this thing was not working, and it took like 15 minutes to get that sign. Oh, technical difficulties. We moved to a different, and I said, oh my gosh. Then I emailed Cheryl and she said, try again, try again. I'm like, okay, I'm trying. No worries, no worries. So I'm here. I'm like, okay. So plan A, B, C. What can you do?
Well, we're glad you're with us.
But I'm glad to have that conversation with the colleagues here. It was nice to
Yeah.
kind of like, I was looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I left them alone. I apologize.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that I can see here that are trying to pop up. So what are some of the things we haven't been talking about? So more on the accreditation end. Usually that's what we talk about on our campus. My faculty colleagues are like, we're not doing SLOs. The commission, forget them, tell them we're not doing it. So we have some rebels in our department, right? So, and then department-wide policies regarding late work during DE, right? Okay, yeah, that impact SLOs and assessments, moving from data collection to making changes suggested by the data. I think that for me is huge. Not just right as a faculty member, but I think just as, you know, a stakeholder in the college. Because if we are doing all of this assessment, we need to close the loop somehow, right? So we don't want to assess just for assessment's sake, right? We should be assessing, right, making things measurable, meaningful, and using that to inform future practices. All right, so grading using other programs to avoid plagiarism, right? So maybe some strategies and techniques on your campus to help, right, with authenticity, right? Good. So which courses are more or less okay and which ones need our focused attention? Yeah, so there might be some, if you have students statistically that are not performing very well in courses, right? Are your campuses talking about self-assessment in terms of like instructors? Right. So if we have, you know, success and retention rates, right, in our own classes, right, to maybe have that conversation. I know that gets a slippery slope. People don't want to go there, right? But I do. I look at my success and retention rates all the time. And also too, I'm sure as there's a lot of English folks in here, when I write an essay prompt, just because it makes sense to me, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make sense to them. Right. So if I'm receiving a bunch of essays, right, and things are not, you know, I'm not receiving the papers, right, that I thought I should, it's not that all of my students, right, just don't get it. It's probably a problem or a fault with my prompt, right? So yeah, maybe I'd like to ask other faculty members and other disciplines to read my essay prompts does it make sense to them? Right? So that they know what I'm asking. Okay, good. So ensuring that our assessments are actually being completed by our students. Yeah, I think that speaks back to authenticity as well. Where we can find out more information in guided pathways in regards to PE classes. That's a great one. And I don't know, Sherry, if you've had that conversation with any of the folks in PE on our campus, but that's a great one. Like where do the yoga classes fall into? Where does boxing fall in?
You know, that all just depends on how you structure, right?
Right.
So, you know, at Compton College, we have organized all of our everything, like our whole structure, by these guided pathways divisions, which are essentially our meta majors. And we have 5 divisions. So we do have health and public service, and that's where our PE falls, but that's also where our nursing program falls and our human development. So we, you know, we've really restructured. We have our STEM division and our business and industrial studies and fine arts in communications and humanities. I'm missing one, social sciences. So we've actually restructured our whole college along these divisions, and that's helped with our meta majors, and that's helped with, you know, clustering things in a certain way on our college. There's a couple things here about grading and using programs to avoid plagiarism and ensuring that our students are actually, you know, our assessments are being completed by our students. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of discussion going on right now, at least on my CIO listserv for the vice presidents, about how should we be so concerned about just who's doing it? Do we do proctorio? Or do we try to redesign our assessments so that, and engage our students so that there's not that feeling that they have of the stress of needing to possibly cheat or plagiarize? And so I think some of those things can come out of the conversations about our assessment practices. And that is something I, as the vice president, I'm not going to be walking to the faculty and saying, you know, do it this way. Those questions have to come organically. And I think they're good food for thought on how we maybe do things a little bit differently. Like I said, the pandemic, for all of its struggles, has maybe forced us to rethink how we're doing certain things. I know we're coming up on the end of our session here. And I see that Megan put in the survey for this breakout session. So please do that so it helps us better prepare. And I like the ideas of what we're not talking about. That will help us as we go back to our accreditation steering committee to think about how we can connect the ensuring learning to an assessment to accreditation, which is our focus. And we'll take these ideas back. And our goal is to try to write some sort of a white paper in the spring, or maybe at least a rostrum article.
So I know that Claudia went ahead and put her email earlier on in the chat. So I also included my email as well as Sherry's email. Please feel free to reach out to us for any time. We are available to you and we love to hear your ideas. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
I also put the link for the next, the panel discussion webinar that's coming up next in the chat as well.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
care.
See ya.